Imagine you are at a neighborhood barbecue. You walk out into the backyard, you've got like a cold drink in hand, and you step onto this gorgeous, newly built
Oh,
deck.
yeah, and your eyes just immediately drawn to the shiny surface, right?
Exactly.
You're looking at these immaculate composite boards, perfectly spaced, modern railings. Maybe there's even, a built-in fire pit with some ambient LED lighting tucked underneath it.
Totally. And it feels completely solid underfoot. The aesthetic is just flawless. But what you aren't seeing, what is literally hidden beneath your shoes, is the true anatomy of that structure.
The skeleton.
Right, the skeleton.
Yeah.
And if that invisible skeleton is compromised, all that shiny surface beauty is essentially just a very expensive, highly polished illusion.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, you are walking on a dangerous house of cards that just happens to look like a luxury patio.
It's a scary thought.
It is. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because whether you are a DIY enthusiast looking to tackle a massive backyard project this summer, or maybe you're someone getting ready to hire a contractor and you just want to know exactly what standards to hold them to.
Which is so important.
Oh, absolutely. Or, honestly, if you are just insanely curious about the hidden mechanics of how things are built to last, there is profound wisdom in understanding this invisible anatomy.
There really is.
Today, we are looking right past the surface to uncover the hidden bones that guarantee true longevity. And we're using this incredible masterclass video by DC.
Yeah, DC from Collins Builder.
Right. He's the owner of Collins Builder and the author of the Black Contractor's Guide. We are diving deep into his complete deck framing guide, from joists to blocking and post setting.
And, DC's approach is incredibly compelling because he goes so far beyond just teaching basic carpentry steps.
Oh, for sure.
He's really teaching this overarching philosophy of structural integrity. He approaches a deck not as a, temporary outdoor floor, but as a blueprint for building a generational legacy.
I love that framing.
Right. And his dedication to educating the next generation of builders is so deep that he actually weaves in highly specific video production tips for other tradesmen right alongside the carpentry techniques.
Yeah, I found those production tips fascinating. I mean, he's effectively giving other builders a crash course in how to document their own knowledge.
Exactly.
Like, for instance, he advises creators to use a master voiceover to tie all their short, kind of disconnected job site clips together into a single, cohesive 10 to 12-minute guide.
Which is just a brilliant piece of cognitive psychology, really.
Wait, how do you mean?
Well, think about it. If you just stitch together raw job site footage, the viewer is completely overwhelmed by, the whining of circular saws, the wind blowing into the microphone, all these disjointed visual jumps.
No, sure, it's just chaos.
Exactly. But a master voiceover strips away all that chaotic noise of the construction site. It provides a calm, continuous narrative thread. So it actually lowers the cognitive load for the viewer, allowing them to truly absorb the complex geometry and the physics of the build.
That makes so much sense. He also stresses getting incredibly tight macro close-ups on the small hardware details.
Yes.
Like the application of the joist tape or the seating of the hurricane ties. Because he understands that a wide shot of a finished deck, well, it teaches you absolutely nothing about how it actually survives a storm.
Right. He wants his audience to physically see the micro decisions.
Yeah.
The things that separate a deck that, rots in 5 years
Hmm.
from one that stands strong for 50.
Yeah. And that philosophy of longevity starts literally in the dirt.
It does.
Because you cannot build a resilient structure if the things anchoring it to the earth are compromised. So, DC's guide begins with a demoed deck, but rather than blindly bulldozing the entire old structure into a dumpster.
Which a lot of people do.
Right. But he evaluates what is already there with a highly critical eye. He retains the structurally sound beams and the existing posts that actually pass inspection.
Yeah, and I want to highlight something there. Because true structural integrity doesn't necessarily mean just throwing away everything old.
Okay.
He has this really specific pro tip regarding what to do if the base of an existing load-bearing post has minor surface deterioration but is fundamentally sound at its core.
I loved this part.
Right. Instead of ripping it out, he uses wood plastic and a 2-part epoxy resin, like Bondo, to basically repair and seal it before continuing the build.
When I saw that, honestly, it reminded me of the mechanics of a highly skilled conservative dentist.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, like a mediocre dentist sees a cavity and might suggest just ripping the whole tooth out to put in an expensive titanium implant, which, traumatizes the jawbone and creates this massive invasive project.
Right. Totally unnecessary.
Exactly. But a master dentist meticulously drills out only the localized decay. They preserve the healthy, deeply anchored root system, fill the void, and cap it to seal out oxygen and bacteria.
And that's exactly what DC is doing with these posts.
He's respecting the existing structural integration and sealing it chemically so the rot just can't spread.
It's such a perfect illustration of preserving the integrated strength of a system. By sealing it with that epoxy resin, he is cutting off the oxygen and moisture supply, which completely halts the biological process of wood rot.
Wow. Okay, so once that foundation is evaluated and prepped, whether you are working with a masterfully restored post or just a brand new pressure-treated 4x4, we hit a really critical physics problem.
We do.
Because before a single piece of framing lumber is laid across those posts, DC goes through this painstaking process to ensure every single vertical anchor is perfectly plumb and level.
And just to clarify, plumb meaning perfectly straight up and down, zero tilt.
Right, and I imagine the temptation for a rushed builder is to just, eyeball it.
Oh, absolutely. Get it close enough, build the heavy frame on top, and then maybe use the weight of the structure to force everything into alignment at the end.
Yeah, but that's a terrible idea, isn't it?
It's a disaster. Attempting to force a post into plumb after it's carrying thousands of pounds of framework introduces massive, invisible internal stress into the joints.
Because gravity doesn't care about your shortcut.
Exactly. Gravity is an absolute constant. It is going to pull straight down toward the center of the earth no matter what. So if your wooden post is tilted even a fraction of a degree at the bottom, it's going to be inches off center at the top.
So the gravity is no longer pushing the weight straight through the dense vertical grain of the wood and down into the concrete pier.
Right. Gravity is now pushing at an angle. It is actively trying to snap the wood in half. It's much like breaking a twig over your knee.
It's a terrifying mental image for a deck.
Yeah, the entire structure is basically in a constant silent battle against itself. So by ensuring the posts are perfectly vertical first, the downward force transfers smoothly right to the center of mass.
So you are harmonizing with gravity rather than fighting a losing war against it.
Harmonizing with gravity, yes.
I love that. So the vertical anchors are set perfectly straight. Now DC introduces the horizontal framework, and he's specifically using 2x10 pressure-treated lumber. But here is where we pivot from basic physics into, structural chemistry.
Yeah, this is so cool.
Because it's not just about stacking the wood, right? It's about the very specific ecosystem of hardware holding that wood together.
What's fascinating here is the specific holy trinity of hardware DC insists upon. And it starts with ZMAX, or heavily galvanized joist hangers.
Okay, so he notes these are absolutely crucial for preventing corrosion, which brings up a major question for me.
Okay, sure.
I've seen pressure-treated lumber. It has that kind of greenish tint. It's heavy. It smells a bit chemical. But what exactly is inside that wood that makes it so incredibly hostile to metal?
Okay. Well, the key protective ingredient in most modern residential pressure-treated lumber is copper.
Wait, actual copper?
Yeah, usually a compound like alkaline copper quaternary. So the copper is forced deep into the wood fibers under extreme pressure, and it is phenomenally effective at stopping fungi and insects from eating the wood.
Okay, that sounds like a good thing.
It is. But there is a severe trade-off. When you introduce water, like rain, melting snow, or even just really high humidity, that moisture acts as an electrolyte.
Like the liquid inside a car battery?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly like a car battery. So when you place bare steel, like a standard cheap joist hanger, tightly against copper-infused wood, and then you add the electrolyte of rainwater, you trigger a process called galvanic corrosion.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the two dissimilar metals start frantically transferring electrons. The steel literally sacrifices itself to the copper, so it just rusts and dissolves at an incredibly accelerated, completely unnatural rate.
That is insane. So you could build a beautifully level deck, cut perfectly tight joints, do everything right.
Yep.
But if you try to save a few bucks by buying non-galvanized metal hangers, the chemicals in the wood will literally eat the metal brackets from the inside out.
Exactly.
The whole thing will just drop to the ground one day, and you wouldn't even see the corrosion happening until it failed.
Right, because the joints rot completely invisibly. That's why the heavy galvanized coating on ZMAX hardware is so vital. It acts as a chemical shield, keeping the copper and the steel safely separated.
Wow. Okay, so that's the hangers. What's the second piece?
The second piece of DC's hardware trinity is the hurricane tie. These are metal straps that physically bind the 2x10 joists down to the main support beams.
You know, most people think about deck strength strictly in terms of vertical load.
Sure they do.
Like, they worry about whether the deck can hold a massive barbecue grill or, 12 people standing around talking or some heavy patio furniture. They just think about weight pushing straight down.
And standard gravity is actually relatively easy to support.
Mm.
The true enemy of a deck is lateral force.
Like sideways movement.
Yeah, energy pushing the structure side to side. So when the wind howls against the side of the house, or when guests are walking across the boards, or even just the natural seasonal shifting of the topsoil.
Mm.
Without hurricane ties, a deck might easily hold 10,000 pounds of vertical weight. But over time, those side-to-side forces will loosen the joints, creating a terrifying wobbly sway.
Oh man, I have absolutely been on older decks where you take a single step and the entire platform shimmies underneath you like a boat on water.
It is a deeply unsettling feeling, isn't it?
It's the worst. You
Yeah.
just freeze and hope it doesn't collapse.
Well, that shimmy is the literal physical manifestation of missing lateral strength. The hurricane ties lock the intersecting angles of the wood together. They turn a collection of balanced beams into an unyielding, rigid grid that just aggressively resists those shear forces.
Okay, that makes total sense. Which ties directly into the third element of his hardware equation, right? Relying on specialized deck screws in key structural areas rather than just using standard nails.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating mechanical distinction. Nails actually have incredible shear strength, meaning if you drive a nail in and try to push it from the side, it will bend before it snaps. But they have terrible pull-out strength. I mean, you can pry a nail straight out of a board with the back of a hammer relatively easily.
Yeah, that's true.
But you have to remember, wood is a biological material. It never stops reacting to its environment.
Because it absorbs moisture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As the seasons change, the wood expands in the humid summers and shrinks in the dry winters. And that constant swelling and contracting acts like a microscopic pry bar, slowly backing nails out of their holes year after year.
Oh, wow.
But deck screws, however, have aggressive threading that physically bites into the cellular structure of the wood fibers. So they maintain relentless pull-out tension despite decades of seasonal movement.
It's really a masterclass in anticipating invisible forces. I mean, he is looking at raw lumber and he's planning for the chemical reactions, the lateral wind forces, and the microscopic swelling of the wood grain 10 years down the line.
It really is visionary in a very practical way.
Yeah. So our posts are perfectly vertical, the metal won't dissolve, and the hardware resists twisting. Now the focus shifts entirely to creating a flawless horizontal floor.
All right, phase 3.
DC walks through the standard layout, spacing the joists 16 inches on center. But here's where it gets really interesting, because DC uses a method he calls the plane down technique.
Yes, and this step directly addresses the fundamental reality of working with organic materials. When you go to the lumberyard and buy 2x10 joists, we tend to visualize them as perfectly manufactured, identical geometric rectangles.
Right, like perfectly straight lines, but they used to be trees. They have knots, they grew in different soil, they have different moisture content.
Exactly. And because of those natural variations, even the absolute highest grade lumber is not perfectly straight. Most joists will have a slight upward bow, or what DC refers to as a belly, right in the middle of the span.
And his solution for a perfectly flat floor is to string a highly taut guideline across the top of the entire frame, find every single belly that crowns above that line, and then take a power planer to literally shave down the high spots of the wood.
Until the entire horizontal plane is microscopically flat. Think about the physics of skipping that step. You spend thousands of dollars on beautiful manufactured composite decking, and then you lay it over joists that are uneven.
Right.
Composite material is flexible. So over a few hot summer months, those really expensive finished boards will heat up and physically mold themselves to the shape of the framing underneath.
And you end up with a luxury deck that feels like a wavy funhouse floor when you walk on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Not what you want.
By taking the time to shave down the bellies, DC guarantees the final visual surface is flawless. But as brilliant as the planer technique is, DC introduces another material here that he explicitly calls a game changer.
Oh, the joist tape.
Yes, the joist tape. He applies this specialized waterproof tape directly over the top, exposed edge of every single joist before the floor goes down.
Because the top edge of a joist is actually its most vulnerable point.
Really? Why is that?
Well, when it rains, water seeps through the cracks between the floorboards, and it just rests flat on top of the joist.
Oh, it just sits there. Yeah, it sits there. And through capillary action, the wood fibers slowly suck that sitting water deep into the core of the lumber, basically rotting the frame from the top down.
Wow.
So the joist tape acts as an impermeable membrane. It shunts the water off the sides and keeps that structural wood completely dry.
Okay, I have to jump in and challenge this for a second.
Right.
Because DC specifically notes in his masterclass, and I quote, "Most carpenters don't use it, but I'm not one of them."
He does say that.
So if this tape is truly a game changer that significantly prevents core rot, why in the world would a professional skip it?
That's a great question.
Let's think about the bidding process. If a contractor is trying to win a job, is a couple of rolls of tape going to bankrupt them? Does it take days of extra labor? Or is it just stubbornness and a refusal to adopt new technology?
I mean, it is a harsh reality of contracting economics. It's not just the cost of the material, though specialized membrane tape does cut into margins, sure. It is predominantly the time cost. You have to meticulously unroll it, perfectly align it over the center of this really narrow joist, and then press it down smoothly across literally hundreds of linear feet of lumber.
Okay, so it's tedious.
Very. And in a hyper-competitive industry where time is literally money, crews are highly incentivized to finish one job and rapidly move to the next. The unfortunate reality is that steps which consume labor but yield absolutely zero immediate visual result.
They're the first to go.
They are almost universally the first corners to be cut.
Because when it comes time for the homeowner to do the final walkthrough and, hand over the check, a deck built with joist tape and a deck built without joist tape look identical.
Exactly. The homeowner is looking at the shiny railings, not the invisible membrane.
And the building inspector isn't mandating it either, right?
Nope. The true catastrophic cost of skipping joist tape doesn't reveal itself for 8 to 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah. A decade later, the taped deck remains rock solid, while the unpaved deck begins to sag dangerously as those deck screws just pull right out of the spongy, rotted tops of the joists.
That is wild.
So when DC insists on applying this tape, knowing full well his competitors are saving time and money by skipping it, it serves as a profound marker of his integrity.
I totally agree.
He isn't building to survive a 30-minute walkthrough. He's constructing a legacy that will outlast his involvement by decades.
That is a staggering distinction in craftsmanship. Truly.
It is.
All right, so the frame is perfectly plumb, the hardware is chemically shielded, the bellies are shaved flat, and the tops of the joists are armored with this waterproof tape. You would assume it's time to lay down the floorboards.
You would think so.
But we aren't done battling the biological nature of wood, because wood acts like a sponge, and as it sits in the sun, it dries out. So how does a builder freeze this entire system in place before it just warps out of control?
And that brings us to the crucial step of midspan blocking.
This is how we stop the twisting.
Yes. Remember that this pressure-treated wood was saturated with liquid chemicals.
Right, the copper and all that.
Right. So as it sits outside over the years, that moisture evaporates. And as the cells dry, they shrink asymmetrically depending on the orientation of the original tree rings.
Okay.
This causes the long parallel joist to aggressively want to curl, cup, and twist out of shape. If you merely lay the floorboards on top, the joist can easily twist right out from underneath them, popping screws and basically ruining the floor.
Oh, man. So DC takes shorter pieces of that same 2x10 material and inserts them perpendicularly between the long joists, creating this tight grid down the middle of the span.
Exactly.
I'm trying to picture the physics of this. It's kind of like, okay, think about holding a flimsy, 300-page paperback book by the front and back covers.
Okay, I'm with you.
If you twist your hands in opposite directions, the pages easily fan out, they slide past each other, and the whole book just works out of shape.
Right. But if you take a C-clamp and you put it right in the middle of that paperback and crank it down as tight as it will go.
Ooh! The pages can't slide anymore. The book suddenly acts like a solid wooden block. You just can't twist it at all.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the build, the installation of the midspan blocking is the precise moment the deck undergoes a metamorphosis.
A metamorphosis, I like that.
Well, before the blocking goes in, you essentially have a collection of individual parallel boards that just happen to be hovering near each other. They're independent actors.
Right.
But once that blocking is wedged tightly between them and screwed securely into place, you lock all those independent lines together.
So the twisting force of one joist is completely counteracted by the blocking pushing against the adjacent joist.
Yes, it transfers a load across the entire plane. The deck transforms from a collection of parts into a single, unified, monolithic structure.
Monolithic structure. It behaves as one massive object. And from that rigidly locked frame, DC moves to the final structural transition points, Like, he details the complex geometry of cutting stair stringers and setting the landing, specifically pointing to the meticulous techniques he utilized in his recent La Mesa project.
Right.
The goal is to create flawless, secure pathways that seamlessly tie this monolithic platform back into the surrounding earth.
And it is only after every single one of these invisible steps is completed. I mean, the foundation restoration, the plum setting, the anti-corrosion hardware, the lateral ties, the shaved joists, the protective membrane tape, the anti-twist blocking, and the stair geometry.
It's so much.
It's huge. But only then is the frame truly ready to receive the finished material.
Which in DC's video involves laying down premium composite decking. He specifically references utilizing Trex tiki birch boards.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah, and that brings the entire masterclass full circle, because that beautiful, perfectly spaced Trex composite is exactly the shiny, immaculate surface we envision at the neighborhood barbecue at the very beginning of this conversation.
You are finally seeing the aesthetic reward. But now, having walked through the anatomy, you understand exactly the level of obsession and physics required to actually earn the right to lay those beautiful boards down.
Earning the right, yeah.
And DC closes out his video by walking over the fully taped, blocked frame, and he delivers this stark warning to his audience. He says, a solid deck starts with the frame. Don't skip the details like joist tape or hurricane ties.
So what does this all mean? I think the overarching theme here is a powerful, almost unsettling reminder that true quality, the things that guarantee longevity, safety, and resilience, is almost always completely invisible to the naked eye.
It really is.
We highly recommend looking up DC's carpentry courses and grabbing a copy of the Black Contractor's Guide if you want to master these foundational skills yourself. Or honestly, even if you just want to know exactly what to look for the next time you hire someone.
The knowledge is genuinely invaluable. And, I'd like to leave you with a lingering concept to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Let's hear it.
When you walk out onto a perfectly solid, quiet deck, or, honestly, when you experience any flawlessly functioning system in your life, you are not just experiencing a good product. You're experiencing the legacy of hundreds of tiny, invisible decisions.
Wow.
A shaved belly here, a strip of hidden membrane tape there, a specific screw chosen instead of a nail. It begs a much broader question for you to explore in your own life.
Okay.
Think about the invisible foundations holding up your daily routines, your career, or the structure